Sometimes when you are in the military, you get caught up in the routine. You think the world revolves around training exercises and deployments. Sometimes you forget that there are things out there, which no one can explain, and the military exercises will never prepare for things you might have to encounter. Well, there is a story of a U.S. Marine who has experienced something in the mountains of California. I will not name him. Only thing I can say is that he is a 0311 stationed in Camp Pendleton, California with 3rd Battalion 1st Marines. First, I'm a Marine rifleman stationed at Camp Pendleton, California. I live being here quite frankly. I am from Utah, so proximity to my parents in Las Vegas made it that much better. This is my first duty station, and so far I quite enjoyed it. Sure, things can get hard from time to time, but nothing that I can't handle. My battalion just recently completed its Marine Expeditionary Unit tour. Unfortunately, I didn't get to participate because I just arrived. Let me tell you, being new guy in a recently redeployed unit is not easy, but I trained hard and learned what I could from the guys that just did a deployment. Anyways, Marine Corps does not like to be idle. About 2 months after redeployment, we were getting ready for another deployment to Afghanistan. A part of preparation for Afghanistan, units typically had to conduct an exercise at Marine Mountain Warfare Training Center. If you don't know what it is, I suggest you look it up. Some people say it's in Bridgeport, California, but that's not quite right either. It's literally in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, pretty close to Yosemite National Park. But we were still about 2 months out from going over there. Meanwhile, we kept going to the ranges and doing a lot of road marches. About 2 weeks out, I ran into a buddy of mine who I went to SOI with at Chow Hall. We sat down and talked for a little while. I asked him how he was doing and told me that his unit just got done at MWTC, and that it was crazy. They had a Marine go crazy, and another one completely vanished. Apparently they are still looking for him. Anyway, he said the elevation there is a bit much, and not everyone can handle it. I asked him how he felt the whole time, and he told me that there was a lot of shit that outright creeped him out. He told me that when he was on the night watch, he kept hearing his name being called in the dark, but he was the only one up in his whole platoon, and rest of the company was a good distance away to come over there to fuck with him. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I just discounted the whole thing as lack of oxygen. About a week out, we began packing our containers and gear. We received a lot of briefings, one specifically mentioning a missing Marine. His name was Lance Corporal Anderson. Apparently he just left his night watch and disappeared. They kept trying to follow his footprints in the snow, but they just disappeared at one point. We were briefed that search will continue while we are there. It shouldn't interrupt our training in any way, shape or form. Early in the morning on November 15th, we got on the buses and headed over to Bridgeport. It was a very enjoyable ride, very scenic with breathtaking transition from desert to woods and mountains. We finally arrived late at night. Company First Sergeant held a formation and assigned us our barracks space. I was dead tired. I just threw my sleeping bag on my bunk and collapsed. We woke up at 0500, and our surprise, the commander wanted us to do PT and start getting acclimated. I scrambled to pull out my PFT uniform and running shoes and get in formation. It took me so long to get ready that I didn't shave. My corporal tore me a new one for not doing that. Like I said before, these guys just got back from deployment and they weren't playing around. After the miserable 6-mile run in my life, we got done with PFT and finally got to shower. To be quite honest, all I wanted to is collapse on my bunk and sleep another couple of hours, but we had a formation before we had to download our duffel bags from our platoon container. The whole first I was just dragging ass from the altitude. Finally at 2200 we got done with all of the preparations and set up to start our exercise. Right as I hit the bunk and began passing out, my team leader shook my leg and told me that I have a radio watch at the company operations center at 0300. Oh, how fucking great. I woke up 4 hours later and dragged myself to a building where company operations center was. All I had to do was an hourly radio check with battalion COC, so I just kept napping in between. Suddenly I heard my name called. I fell of the chair and hit my head on the floor. I quickly got up thinking it was our company first sergeant walking in, but there was no one there. I walked outside and only thing I saw was a Marine smoking a cigarette few hundred yards by India Company's COC. There is no way it was him, I thought. He doesn't even know my name. Whatever. Probably a dream. I decided to smoke a cigarette. My shift was about to be over in 20 minutes. Finally first saw a Marine walking from the barracks area. He was walking fast, little too fast for 0400. Probably a boot, I thought. As he was approaching I noticed that it was no one I know. He didn't have his headgear, and he had a desert pattern uniform instead of woodland-like rest of the battalion. He kept walking towards my COC, but then he made an abrupt left turn and began running. I caught a glimpse of his face, and his eyes were wide open as well as his mouth. Damn, I thought, who the fuck is this dude? He just kept running toward the mountains. I just kept looking at him. For a second I wondered if it was a missing Marine from 1st Recon. But I was hesitant to yell out. What if it was some crazy officer doing his pre-PFT? I didn't think anything of it, and I went inside the COC. About 15 minutes later my relief showed up and told me that I still had to do PFT. Great, I thought. I will be exhausted beyond imagination at the end of the day. I didn't get to sleep because all of the early birds in the barracks began waking up talking and making shit tons of noise. I just put my PFT uniform on and just went outside at 5:45. Buddy of mine was giving me shit about me forgetting to shave again. This time I went under the radar. After PFT, I decided to skip chow to get some sleep. Later I found that to be a very dumb idea. I racked out until about 0830. My squadmates left me alone as they were too busy bullshitting and smoking outside of the barracks bay. The third day was consisted of getting ready to use our cold weather equipment. We were having classes on cold weather equipment all day. During the whole time I kept passing out. Finally my team leader took me outside for some extra PFT. Let's just say it didn't help, and I just decided to stand up for a class instead of sitting down. I was glad the day ended. I saw my bunk and I just crashed. The elevation was really kicking my ass. The third day I felt little better. My platoon commander decided that he wanted to repeat 6-mile run just to see how everyone felt. We all were slowly getting acclimated and no one fell out of the run this time. We only had 2 days left before heading into mountains. We spent the day packing up our gear and doing things like laundry. If you ever done laundry at the training center, you know how painful it could be. I sat there waiting for washing machine to free up along with other 100 or so Marines. There are only 10 washers and dryers, so I just sat there on my phone trying unsuccessfully to catch some signal to call my girlfriend. While I was sitting there I overheard 2 Marines talking. One of them said that he heard his name being called several times while he was guarding ammo, but there was no one there and how freaked out he was. He also said that he saw a figure walking back and forth on the highway, and the figure just disappeared. I decided to join the conversation with my 2 cents. You can tell that the Marine was happy to hear my story because it confirmed that he wasn't crazy. Damn, I thought, how come we both heard and saw the same thing? Well, a washer opened up and I dumped my dirty uniforms into it and went to get some food at the chow hall. The whole time I felt creeped out by what I have heard. I spent rest of the day packing up my rucksack and a duffel bag. The next day after PFT, we put our duffel bags into our containers, since we weren't going to use any of the extra crap in it out in the mountains. We had a movement rehearsal and few more classes on mountain survival techniques. We were set to step out at 0200. The plan was to ruck up to an assembly area on the slope of the mountain for 4 hours and then set up a patrol base where we would spend 3 days applying what we learned. After that we would conduct land navigation training and some tactical stuff as well. And the second week we would do an actual operation called Mountain Ascent. We would ruck another 20 miles up the mountains where we would establish another patrol base, and then we would switch out to play OPFOR and funnel all of the platoons and companies through STX lanes. STX stands for Situation Training Exercise, meaning we would be given a scenario or mission we would have to accomplish. I didn't get any sleep that night. I tried, but waking at up 2300 wasn't very appealing. We cleared out and cleaned our barracks and headed for a formation. My squad leader checked everybody's gear, making sure our night vision was operational and we had enough gear. It started to rain, meaning it was going to turn into snow higher we go up. Let's just say that part was beyond miserable. We couldn't wait to start moving. Temperature dropped to about 35 degrees, and we were just standing there. Finally we stepped out. The initial walk wasn't too bad. We kept a good pace and kept climbing up the mountains. The movement was only about 12 kilometers, but due to elevation it felt like it was forever. We took our first break 3 hours later. It was still dark and snowing, creating a magnificent scenery. You could see lights of a cantonment area in the background of the mountains. As sun came up, clouds slowly cleared out and we got some sun. We arrived at our assembly area around 0700. Everyone collapsed from exhaustion. We were told to pull out our MREs and eat our breakfast. All I wanted to do was sleep at that point. Rest of the day we spent setting up our sleeping areas and getting our security perimeters established. Our squad leader put out some notes regarding land navigation training we were about to do. It was going to start at 0100 and end at 09, giving us 8 hours to find our points. Company Operations Center was set up on the back on the MTBR, a huge dump truck that followed us the whole time we were walking. We were issued maps and list of grids to find. We were broken up in the groups of 3 in light of what happened to other unit who did thus individual and ended missing a Marine. I got stuck with my team leader and another guy from another team. After a long safety brief we stepped off. The first point was about 1500 meters from us on the slope of a mountain. We kept walking in the dark, luckily without rucksacks, just weapon, body armor and a helmet. There were Marines everywhere spread put throughout the area. There was plenty of moonlight as well. I was the last one to walk in our small 3-man line. Suddenly I hear my name being called again. I stopped and yelled at my corporal. I thought it was him. He came up to me and scolded me for violating the noise discipline. He also said that he never called out my name and to just shut the fuck up from now on. Well, that was creepy. We found 4 points and returned to our patrol base around 0900. I collapsed from exhaustion and ate my MRE. We were told to take a quick nap until noon. We had some more training to do that day. I quickly passed out. I had a very vivid nightmare. We were walking at night and I had to turn around. When I did, first saw a Marine with same desert pattern marpat standing right behind me looking at me. His face was pale like he was dead and his eyes were completely black. I woke up abruptly and looked around. It was still sunny. Bunch of Marines were doing the same thing I was doing. sleeping on their rucks. I looked at my watch, it was 10:30. I didn't want to go back to sleep. I just sat there thinking about what was happening to me. At 1300 we had a quick formation, where our gunny put out some notes regarding the following few days. We spent rest of the day cleaning our weapons and doing some small unit tactics training. For night I was put on the watch at the entrance to company assembly area. I was given a radio and told to call anybody coming or out to the COC. Of course, me being a new guy, the first got stuck with 0200 shift. Adding to the misery, it started to snow right before I had to report. I walked over to where I was supposed to be to find a lonely Marine standing there with a radio in his hand. Finally, he whined, "Here is the radio. Just do a radio check with COC every 15 minutes, otherwise you'll go crazy." He handed me the radio and quickly disappeared. Since everybody was sleeping, I pulled out a pack of cigarettes, knowing that it was a wrong thing to do. I lit one up and stood there looking at the scenery. As snow started picking up, it was becoming more difficult to see. After about 30 minutes I started hearing footsteps in the snow. They were very abrupt, like someone kept walking really fast and then would stop. I kept trying to call out to whoever was there, but there was no response. Suddenly, I heard my name being called again. I could tell that it was not coming from inside off in the assembly area. I froze in fear, was paralyzed for a second. "Joe, come here, over here." I heard again. The voice calling me didn't sound human, it was almost otherworldly. Fuck that, I thought. I finally gathered enough courage to run towards COC. I took off running and immediately tripped and fell. "Joe, I am over here, I need help, please," the voice kept on talking. I got up and took off running. I couldn't see the COC, so I just kept running in the direction of the sound of the generator. Suddenly, I came to dead stop. Right on the front of me I see the same Marine I saw in my dream. He was just standing there very still. He was dressed in the desert marpat. His name tag was missing. His face was pale white, and his eyes were completely dark. He was standing there and looking at me. I felt paralyzed. I closed my eyes and started running through where I thought he was standing. I tripped and fell again. I got up and kept running. My adrenaline levels were probably off the charts. The whole time I heard voices. I kept hearing, "I just need help, come and talk to me." Finally I heard loud sounds of a generator. I ran up to it and started banging on the gate on the back of the truck. One of the NCOs opened up the tarp opening. "What the fuck, Marine?" he yelled at me. "Get the fuck in the truck." I climbed up on the back and started talking. I said, "Staff Sergeant, there is a guy out there, his eyes are all black and shit." I didn't know what the fuck to do. "Shut the fuck up, devil dog, what did you smoke? Sit down here and wait." He got out of the truck and went to go get a corpsman. I was shivering and shaking the whole time. Company finally showed up after 30 minutes. He pulled out his flashlight to take a closer look at me. He checked my eyes and my pulse and blood pressure. "Dude, I don't what the fuckness going on here with you, but you need to chill the fuck out. Your blood pressure is off the charts." The staff sergeant and first sergeant climbed up in the truck. First sergeant didn't seem happy whatsoever. "If you smoked some shit, Marine, you need to tell us now," he said. "Sir, I didn't smoke anything at all but a Marlboro Light. I'm telling you, there is some dude." I started crying. Finally they saw that I wasn't faking. "Okay, get him down to a clinic downhill first thing in the morning and see if them can drug test him," he said to Staff Sergeant. "Roger that," he responded. I sat in truck until sun came up. Finally I was told by our corpsman to grab my rucksack and leave my weapon in nude vision with my platoon. I had to sit there and wait for a truck to take me down to clinic at cantonment area. Corpsman told me that first sergeant also wants a urinalysis test done on me. He was very convinced that I was a druggie. Whatever, I thought. I know I didn't take anything. I was sitting there waiting for a truck to show up to pick me up and take me back for about 3 hours. I just kept dozing off, and having nightmares and sleep awakenings. Finally I got heard an NCO yelling at me to get in the truck. Ride back was fast, maybe 20 minutes or so. I was told to drop off my gear in the barracks and report to the clinic. I was seen by civilian physician assistant who was grumpy and skeptical the whole time. You could tell he was not believing a single word coming out of mouth. Finally he said, "Okay Marine, here is the deal. There are 2 scenarios here. You either took something that you aren't telling me, or you are having some kind of psychotic outbreak. Neither one of these I can deal with right now. I'll have to send you down to Bridgeport. There's a small clinic there that can give you a UA test and psych eval, but you'll spend a night here because it's too late to take you down there. So report here at 07 tomorrow so we can take you down." I was slightly excited for spending a night away from the mountains and snow. I went back to the barracks, hitting a chow hall on the way back. I felt great and free from all of the judgment I was getting back at my unit. I collapsed on my bunk and started watching YouTube videos. Since everybody was gone, the lonely cell tower at MWTC was finally at the full blast. Before I noticed I was out, I didn't have any nightmares this time. I woke up at 05:45 and went to take a shower. There was about 5 more Marines back in the barracks. Some got hurt during an initial march up the mountain, some were hypothermic. It felt good not to be alone, but this early, in was only 1 up. I walked out to smoke a cigarette. At 06:45 I walked over to aid station and waited. Some sergeant told me to wait here while he is getting a van ready. We finally left. It felt great to be able to leave confines of MWTC and go back out to civilization. The NCO wasn't very talkative, but he did offer to stop at the gas station to get some snacks, an offer I gladly accepted. He dropped me off and told me to call aid station when I was done. I was immediately taken to take a urinalysis test, and then I sat there waiting for a psychologist to show up. The psychologist was a nice native lady. She carefully listened to my experience and took notes. Suddenly, she asked me, "You said you were from Utah. Do you know if you have any relatives that are native?" The question caught me off guard, and I didn't quite know how to answer it. I had to think for a second. My great-grandma was from a reservation in northern Arizona, so I told her I was part, but I don't know the percentage. She then said, "Okay, I will give you some medicine for anxiety." She seemed very concerned, and I began to wonder if I was really losing my shit. I got prescribed some anxiety medication, and before I walked out, she told me that I should seek some spiritual help as well, that there are things out there that conventional medicine can't help with. I didn't really know what she meant by that, but it stuck in my head for some reason. I called back and got picked up in about 2 hours. I got back to MWTC, and was told to get ready to go back out first thing tomorrow morning. Company was getting ready to conduct movement to higher level where the platoon STX lanes will start. Damn, I thought, I had a nice break, now it's time to go back. I wasn't looking forward to it. I was expecting to get mocked and dismissed at every corner. Ride up was uneventful. I reported back to company COC. The first sergeant looked pissed off at something and took it out on me almost immediately. He said, "If some shit comes back positive, I am going to the brig." Damn, I thought, what a great welcome back. I went down to my platoon and grabbed my weapon and nods. No one wanted to talk to me. Everyone seemed exhausted and not very talkative. Naturally, I started isolating. I overheard Marines joking about what I told the duty NCO that night as the word quickly spread throughout the company. We were scheduled to step out to conduct mountain ascent at 0900 the next day. Before we stepped out, in was leaning against my rucksack eating my MRE for breakfast, and doing hot coffee that was delivered to us in the morning, when a Marine from another platoon walked up towards me and sat down. I knew him. He had a Hispanic last name, and I never really talked to him before. He sat right next to me and started talking. "Hey man, what's up? I heard all that shit people are saying about you." I said, "I know, I don't know what the fuck I saw, man, probably elevation or some shit." He then asked, "Are you Navajo?" Again, I was a bit startled by the question. "I think I'm part, but I'm not too sure." "Damn bro, you don't even know your heritage," he continues. "What you saw, man, it's called a Skinwalker. It's an evil spirit that possesses people, but not any kind of people. You have to have native blood flowing through you. It don't want no white people." I was lost for words. Damn, finally someone who believed me. He began explaining that you have to go through some ceremonial shit so the Skinwalker doesn't know who you are. "Listen man, I'm going to my reservation for Christmas leave. My uncle is a shaman and he knows how to deal with this shit. You know what I'm saying? Come with me to Arizona and we'll take care of that." I was hesitant to agree, and I told him that I will think about it. The company started the movement up the mountain. Higher we went, up harder to walk it got. Finally we got to our next assembly area. It was a slope of a mountain covered with snow. We started setting up our couches. This time my tram leader didn't put me on night duty, which was great. We were told that at 0600 our platoon has its first STX lane. Everything was uneventful. I didn't hear any more voices and my anxiety seemed like it was down. Until 2 days before an end of the exercise. We had a night STX lane where we had to walk up YHE Mountain and knock out a makeshift bunker with a machine gun nest. I was the last one in the formation, pulling rear security. We began walking at midnight, hoping to finish the last STX lane. We were about 5 to 10 meters between us. I was just walking up when I heard, "Halt." I stopped and took a knee, trying to look around. I was trying to look for a guy ahead of me, but I couldn't see him. I sat there for a few minutes before I realized something was off. Suddenly, I lost my sense of direction. I heard, "Over here, come here." I started moving towards the voice and I ended up falling off the slope of the mountains. I screamed out, and I just kept rolling down, which seemed like it was forever. I felt sharp pain in my thigh and knee as I was falling, and I hit face on the rock, breaking my nose. I finally stopped rolling. My back twisted so many times I thought I broke my spine. I tried looking up, but an overwhelming pain took right back down. Suddenly I saw him again. He was just standing there looking at me with the same dead eyes. I couldn't scream. I just closed my eyes and kept telling self it wasn't real. But somehow he was still talking to me, like telepathically. "Joe, just look at me. You don't have to be scared." I finally was able to let off a scream, but in reality it was more of a moan. Right side of my body was still somewhat functional and I was able to turn on my flashlight. I closed my eyes again, and I lost my consciousness. I woke up when it was still dark. I could tell that I was getting hypothermic just laying there on the cold ground. The Skinwalker was gone. I was finally able to scream. I let out a scream for help, and I heard voices up on the trail. It was my squad mates looking for me. They got down to where I was. The platoon commander got down there as well. "How in the fuck did you end up here?" I told you motherfuckers to watch your step. He called a 9-line medevac request on the radio. The corpsman was able to come down as well. He had a thermal blanket with him. I got wrapped in it, until helicopters showed up. They hoisted me up and evacuated me to a hospital in Modesto. I don't remember how I got there, but I spent 12 days at the Naval Hospital on Camp Pendleton recovering from my injuries. I was able to come back to my unit right before Christmas leave block. My injuries were too severe for me to continue train up with my unit. So I just took convalescent leave until my medical discharge process begins mid-January. The Corps was having none of what I had to say, but I'm glad I don't have to go back to those mountains.